I've never started out to break any records. I've always tried to do the best I can for the team that I'm playing for. And if in getting those runs I should happen to break any record, well, naturally, I'm very pleased, but I do not deliberately set out to try and break records.
There's only one player ever that's the greatest batsman of all time, it's Sir Donald Bradman.
Suddenly here's this guy who comes along, seems to make 100 every time he bats.
There's no one ever in the history of the game, before or since then, that's been twice as good as the next guy.
He was phenomenal, an absolute phenomenon.
Don Bradman was, without question, the greatest cricketer that ever lived.
Bloke averaged 99. He must have been something special.
The greatest player in cricket, it's got to be Donald Bradman.
I've never seen anybody come near him since, not a single soul. I don't think I ever will.
It stands as a monument to the greatest sportsman Australia has ever produced. The small country town of Bowral, west of Sydney, is the destination for one of world sport's great pilgrimages. Home to the Bradman Museum, it's where he grew up and dreamed of playing for his country.
I think there's only one word to describe Don Bradman. He was a freak.
In some ways, you just shake your head about his life. I mean, he would be walking down the street and people would just stop cars in the middle of the road and get out to get his autograph or shake his hand. You don't sort of quite... And he did that for the best part of his life, 60 years, where he was for the Don and just held in such regard.
He was not just a great cricketer, he was a great Australian.
Not only did he know how to score runs, but he knew how to hang around. He often turned singles into doubles, into triples, and that's what separated him really from the very good players. He simply had this insatiable appetite for runs, and he had a way of calculating how he was going to get them.
Over a period punctuated by the Second World War, Bradman broke every batting record in the game, accumulating 6,996 runs in 52 tests, scoring 29 centuries. He scored runs at such a phenomenal rate that his career batting average has become part of not just cricket, but sporting folklore.
His test average of 99.94 is probably the most famous statistic in all of sport.
It's so close to perfection that it's hard to argue against that.
You've got to remember that he played all his cricket on uncovered pitches. Now, they're not a lot of flat pitches like they play on today, or short boundaries like they got today. We had to hit the ball to the fence. And uncovered pitches, and you get some of those, you get some real bad ones. To average that is absolutely fantastic.
You talk to the players nowadays, well, it's not, couldn't have been the same way back then because in my era or even before, because standards improved, they say that the 100 metres is running less than it was 20 years ago. That's their analogy, which that's fair. But Don Bradman's record is twice as good as anyone else, so he's got to be the greatest player.
The game is not the same today as it was when we played. Technology has done that, and if Don Bradman had used the bat today, that they use today, he wouldn't average 99.94, he would average 199.94, because the jet propelled things they use today, if he'd used one of those, they wouldn't have got the ball back.
Since his retirement in 1948, the number 99.94 has been seen as the standard against which all players are judged.
For me, Sachin Tendulkar is the greatest batsman of all time. And I said that recently. I said when Tendulkar got a double hundred in a one-day game, surely we must view this person as he's right here in front of us still playing. Surely he is the greatest batsman of all time. And all of Australia, you know, email in saying, well, hold on, what about the Don? And you say, yeah, fair point. The bloke averaged 99. He must have been something special.
When you look at the career averages of everyone else who's played Test cricket, the next highest batting average of anyone who played over any length of time was 60. So Bradman was basically twice as good as the next best batsman in all of cricket. And that's a pretty sobering thought.
Which only proves to you and me and everybody else that it was twice as good as anybody else. It's as simple as that, and it's as true as that.
For someone who averages 99, there you have it. You can't just... I'm not a big fan of stats. Stats can lie, but that one can't. So for me, that's setting the standard that this bloke seriously could play.
There's some sort of magic about it in a way. He wasn't the perfect player, so I don't suppose he was very close to it, as 99.94 suggests. He was phenomenal, an absolute phenomenon. And of course, where his strength really lay was at the time in which he played. He played through the Depression. He played when the Australian people, and in fact the English people, needed something to hold on to. He was just as popular in England as he was in Australia. They loved him.
Bradman only ever played cricket in Australia and England. He first established his international reputation in 1930, when he scored 974 runs in 5 tests on British soil.
I would love to have seen him play in 1930 and 34 because that's when he was at his extreme best.
England have never won a test on this ground yet, but it doesn't look like they're going to win this one the way Bradman is batting.
The English were the favourites to win the Ashes that year, but Bradman's record-breaking exploits proved too strong. In his first test appearance, he scored a century. In the next, he scored a double. But it was the third test at Headingley in Leeds where Bradman wrote his name into the history books.
That's his 200. Well done.
There was a test match at Headingley against England in 1930. Australia batted first, and at the end of the day, Bradman himself alone had scored 309.
He still remains the only test player to pass 300 runs in one day's play.
I've never started out to break any records. I've always tried to do the best I can for the team that I'm playing for. If they want me to go in and lose my wicket so that they can win the match, well, I'll be quite happy to do so. On the other hand, if they want me to get runs, then I try and get as many runs as I possibly can. And if in getting those runs I should happen to break any record, well, naturally, I'm very pleased, but I do not deliberately set out to try and break records.
It's a hell of an achievement, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it takes a long time to do that. It took him less time than most people, I know, but it still takes time to do it, and energy and concentration and determination. All that's, he had all those attributes, not a problem. So you have to take a hat off to anybody that makes 300 or wants to make 300.
Records or no records, I'm looking forward to the time when I can come back again to England, which I'm hoping to do someday, and renew acquaintances with all the many friends I have made on this tour over here.
In the 5th and final test at the Oval, Bradman scored yet another double century, forcing a radical rethink by the English captain, Douglas Jardine.
In the last game at the Oval in 1930, he showed a little bit of vulnerability against the short ball in the eyes of Jardine and some other observers.
He was so good that England devised an entire system for him in 1932-33 bodyline, when they decided the only way to get Bradman was to bowl at his body with players packed on the leg side waiting for the catch, and he averaged 56 in that series, which was pretty good, but not brilliant by his standards. But that was how good he was. An entire nation devised one system just to deal with him.
It was within the laws of the game, not within the spirit of the game, and of course it was very effective.
And bowls to a leg trap to which Bradman falls a victim when he has only scored 8.
For any team, and I enjoyed captaincy, and I had to do it with Tendulkar a little bit, of having cunning plans of bowling into the rough and bowling over the wicket and bowling at his hip and all this sort of stuff. But for any team, you know, like Jardine, to go over and have a specific plan for one, designated for one cricketer, for Bradman, bowl body line. And the rules of the game, the laws of the game have to be changed because of body lining. It causes huge controversy between two sides. You know, the history is there that for all this to go on, because we want to target the Don, we need to work out a way to get Bradman out, shows that that there is, you know, a very special cricketer, a very special batsman that every batsman after will be judged by.
It exploded in Adelaide. That's when it really became difficult. In Adelaide, when of course Oldfield and Bill Woodfield, who was the captain, a wonderful gentleman, educationist, headmaster of Melbourne High School, a marvellous man, much loved, one of the most loved figures in Australian cricket history. He was hit, and the mounted police were there, and it is said that it was as well, because it was so close to riot, a serious riot on that time. The country was outraged at the tactics employed by Jardine, and Jardine, of course, just ignored it with his harlequin cap. He just went on, and of course was a very successful captain.
Bradman, however, adjusted, countering the tactic by backing away and playing unconventionally.
He was such a brilliant player. He was unorthodox, but people try and tell you that he hit across the line too much, but if you looked at all his shots, you'll find his feet were in the perfect position to hit the ball on every stroke he played. And he's one of those guys that could pick up the line of the ball and the length of the ball quicker than anybody else, and then do something about it with his feet. And of course, when you get your feet right, the bat is right, and the bat hits the ball, and the ball goes to the boundary. Now, that's what happened with Don Bradman.
He'd always be looking to score, so it was a bad ball, he'd look to hit it for 4, rarely 6, because that would be too risky. If it was a good ball, he'd be looking to take a single and rotate the strike.
But the English reclaimed the Ashes, and Bradman would never forget the experience. Some 50 years later, he advised Australian captains on how to manage short, fast bowling when they faced the West Indies in the 1980s.
He was very understanding of our problems, facing, you know, 4 quality fast bowlers, just the relentless barrage that meant, you know, to batting and the psyche of trying to get on top of that. And then actually believing you could win, that was the hard bit. You know, he understood how difficult it was, and we talked a little bit about body line, and, you know, he had the similarities between the problems you faced, the psyche of knowing you're going to go out to bat against a bloke who's going to bowl halfway down, you've got this certain field position. So he said it was a little bit harder because of the field restrictions of the time for body line, but just a bit of a background into, you know, the famous body line series, and he likened it to what we were facing in that particular series in '84.
So Don Bradman has started in early again to take toll of English bowling. 206 at Worcester. It was 236 in 1930.
Bradman continued his extraordinary run scoring, and crowds gathered wherever he went. But such adulation had a downside.
It obviously got to Bradman. You know, I think there was, in his very early days, there was a situation where he either got some clothing torn, or he got in a crush. You know, the crowd sort of wanted to see him and wanted to touch him, and he got in a crush. And I think that, you know, that was part of the reason why he became so reclusive. I think he had those tendencies anyhow. But, you know, I mean, you can't imagine, unless you've been in that situation, what it would be like. And I mean, to imagine the expectations of Australia, particularly depression years, you know, when everything's down and you're looking for some good news, and suddenly here's this guy who comes along, seems to make 100 every time he bats.
Everybody wanted a piece of Don Bradman, and but, you know, the way he conducted himself both on and off the field was absolutely first class.
On the second day, he adds 94 in 94 minutes and reaches his double century.
Bradman embarked on 2 further Ashes tours to England in 1934 and 1938, amassing huge totals along the way. On the latter tour, he scored an astonishing 13 centuries.
Bradman comes up. From now on, it's Bradman all the way, facing a crisis alone, but the light is failing and play is held up. Starting again, Bradman soon reaches his 100, a magnificent and most useful innings. But with only 3 added, Bowes ends his wonderful knock.
However, the Second World War stopped play for close to a decade.
Bradman, now 39 years old and in his last season of Test cricket, gives the crowd a display of versatile strokes that may make England's bowlers retire and take to playing skittles.
For all the records and adoration, perhaps the Don's greatest achievement was as part of the 1948 Australian touring team to England. It was his 4th and final tour, and his last as captain.
In 1948, the famous Tour of England, they were dubbed the Invincibles Australia. They went through an entire tour without losing a game, and in those days they played all the counties, some of them twice.
It was a difficult time, and so he was loved there as much as he was loved in Australia.
This team did so much for English morale after the war that it's just indescribable how much good it did. It was the second tour after the war. New Zealand toured before us, but we're the first Australian side to go since 1938. And of course we had a bloke called Don Bradman as captain. And the English people just loved him, you know. From his deeds in 30, 34 and 38, they just loved him. And they were going to love him again.
Neil Harvey was just 6 weeks old when Don Bradman was first selected to play for Australia in 1928. In 1948, he was part of the great Invincibles team that dominated in England. And for Harvey, being selected to play alongside the Don was a childhood dream.
I was 19 years of age, 7 years younger than anybody else on tour, but it was a great learning curve for me to tour with these great gentlemen, arguably one of the best sides that's ever been produced by this country, and to look at some of these photographs brings back some very fond memories.
In total, 17 players stepped aboard the RMS Strathaired in Fremantle with no idea sporting immortality awaited.
We spent a lot of time on the deck. We weren't a great training bunch like they are today. I mean, we sort of, as a sort of leisurely trip over, it took 28 days from Fremantle to London. At times the crew used to put the nets up on the ship, on the sports deck. They used to put the nets up. Of course you don't use cricket balls and bats up there, or stumps, but the crew made a set of stumps in a block of wood and stuck those up. But for a ball, the crew used to make balls out of lengths of rope, and used to twine these lengths of rope to get it to a ball size. And up the bowler's end, there was a bucket of water. And whoever was bowling used to have to dunk the ball in the bucket of water before he bowled it, so the ball would slide off the wooden deck at a fair pace. So that was our practice on board ship.
It was Bradman's final tour, and thousands turned out to see the great man arrive.
We are very glad indeed. In fact, I cannot tell you how delighted we are to be back in England once again. We're very anxious to get on shore and get on with the business.
The mail that was waiting for him when he got to London, when we arrived on the ship, was just amazing. And as we all know, he answered all those letters that he got. He got over 500 letters waiting for him, and he didn't have any assistants to do it. He was up until 1 o'clock in the morning most times while we were practicing for the first 12 days on that tour, and he was up at about 1 o'clock every morning answering these letters. So you've got to take your hat off to him. He did a marvellous job. And not only that, because there were so many lunches and dinners we had to go to during those first 12 days that he was our responder with speeches. And of course he became absolutely first class at that too. He was first class at everything he did, whether it be playing cricket, making speeches, answering letters, anything at all connected with sport or anything else, he was first class.
As captain and ambassador, there were enormous demands on his time. Yet Bradman still managed to score 2 centuries during the series, and his mere presence breathed life into an English population ravaged by the hardships of war.
Food was rationed, everything was rationed. Even if you wanted some chocolate or something, you had to have ration tickets to get them out of the shop. There was no meat around, there were no eggs. For breakfast, if you didn't have kipper, you didn't have anything. There were no steaks, no chops. We ate what the English people ate. We weren't privileged in any way whatsoever in the food department. So we just had what everybody else had on tour, and that's how it was. It was tough. It must have been hellishing tough for the people over there during the war, when things were probably even scarcer.
Bradman claimed his side's victory in the 4th Test at Headingley was Australia's greatest ever success. Chasing 404 to win on the final day, Bradman and Arthur Morris both scored centuries, with Neil Harvey hitting the winning runs.
It was a phenomenal achievement. I mean, that just defies description, to score more than 400 on the last day. I mean, that justified description. It was one of the great sporting achievements of all time. And, you know, Morris's innings must have been phenomenal. And he and Bradman just thought, oh, well, you know, it is achievable.
When they started, they didn't really set out to win the game. I mean, they just played their natural game, and the runs came quickly, because those two blokes could play a few shots around the place. At recent stage, we're mid-afternoon, we all looked at each other in the dressing room and said, gee, we could win this game. And that's how it turned out. We got the runs with about half an hour to spare. And it was one of the greatest wins in cricket history.
However, it is Don Bradman's final innings at the Oval which remains possibly his most famous.
Enter Don Bradman, who got a great ovation.
Well, as we all know, he only needed 4 to average 100 in Test cricket, and nobody knew. Statistics in those days were not on the radar. The press didn't know, the players didn't know, the radio didn't know that he only needed 4 runs to average 100. And of course, when he went out, he got this great reception from the English players. They all crowded around him, took their caps off and gave him 3 raucous cheers. And the crowd joined in as well.
He was bowled second ball by a googly from Eric Hollies, the England leg spinner, and walked off with a duck to his name, left him with the most famous average in the history of Test cricket, 99.94.
Bradman left his final test to a standing ovation.
He came back in the dressing room, and the first thing he said, he sat down, took his cap off, and he said, fancy doing a thing like that. And that's all he said. So it ended a tremendous career in Test cricket, averaged 99.94, and nobody will ever come near it in this game of cricket. We're all very sad for him. It's a sad way to finish, especially when you only need 4 runs to average 100, you know. But it would have been worse, I suppose, if he had known he only needed the 4 and not knowing about it. So that's how it was, and but we're also sad for him. We'd rather like him go out scoring another 100.
Mingling with royalty, the players revelled in their achievement, and Bradman resisted calls to play on.
And I think I'm probably the best judge of the many little creaks and groans that go on in my joints throughout the day, especially when we're out in the field. And I'm quite sure I shall have no regrets at all.
For many years after his retirement, Sir Don Bradman was an administrator and national selector. He always favoured attacking, positive cricketers who entertained the public.
He was a very modern thinker. He'd kept pace with the game, and he understood the nuances that we were faced with compared to what the game was like in his time. So, very interesting man.
There's only one player ever that's the greatest batsman of all time, is Sir Donald Bradman. He's 40 runs per innings higher than anybody else.
My great regret in life, cricketing regret, is that I didn't see him bat. I mean, I probably did see him bat because my father played for the same club team as him, Kensington, but I was obviously too young to remember it. But, you know, I wish I'd seen him bat.
Your Alan Borders, your Viv Richards, your Barry Richards, your Javid Miandads, your Greg Chappells, Sunil Gavaskars, Tendulkars, Laras, all these guys average in the 50s, pretty much. I think Graham Pollock averages 60. This guy averaged twice as much as that, and whatever the era is, to score 100 every 3 innings in Test cricket is just mind-blowing in terms of skill, concentration, ability to convert. It's just phenomenal. So I don't think anyone can touch Don Bradman as a cricketer.
he was twice as good as any of his contemporaries. There's no one ever in the history of the game since then, before or since then, that's been, that's been twice as good as the next guy. So, I mean, you've got to say he's the best player that's ever lived.
I ended up playing with him, which I never ever thought I'd do, or ever thought I'd even met the man. But I did both of those things, and nothing gave me greater pleasure to firstly meet him, then play actually with him, and then go on a tour of England with him, and then later on become a selector with him. So I achieved all my little wishes over a period of time.